When I arrived at the hospital, Ethan was already awake. A piece of gauze was taped to his forehead. Though he looked slightly pale, he seemed otherwise unharmed. Across from him sat a woman in a floral dress, her makeup flawless, draped in the same coat I'd seen her wear in previous photos. I didn't know her personally, but she looked familiar. Luna, I recalled. She was the assistant Ethan had hired 2 months ago. There had been a few times when Ethan, halfway through dinner with me, would rush off the moment she called. As I pushed open the door, both of them looked startled. It was Luna who stood up first, offering me a polite smile. "Mrs. Gu," she greeted. That's when I noticed she had a few injuries of her own. Her dress was stained with blood, and both her arm and forehead were scraped. It was clear they'd been in the same car accident. Earlier that morning, Ethan had told me he was leaving on a business trip. I'd even packed his luggage for him. He had always been meticulous about work, and if Luna was accompanying him for business, she definitely wouldn't have shown up in that outfit. Before I could respond, Ethan spoke first. His voice was puzzled. "Mrs. Gu, I'm married." The room fell silent. None of us had expected it. Ethan had lost his memory, and strangely enough, he'd forgotten only me. After a few more tests, the doctors concluded that he had a mild concussion, nothing serious, except for partial amnesia. It might pass in a few days, or it might linger for years. There was no way to tell. Out in the hallway, Luna pulled me aside. Her eyes were red, her lips parted as if searching for the right words. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Gu. Ethan only got hurt because he was trying to save me. Please don't be angry. Just give him a bit more time. He'll remember you soon." I glanced through the glass at Ethan, frowning in his hospital bed, and said nothing. For Ethan, forgetting me changed nothing in his life. He simply couldn't understand why he had married me. I ladled out a bowl of pork rib soup and handed it to him. Speaking calmly, "A business marriage," I said. He looked at me, confusion in his eyes. From what I know of myself, I wouldn't marry someone I don't like. I ignored him and opened my design software. He wasn't in charge of our story anymore. I was, of course. That's how it had been from the start. 2 years ago. This marriage wasn't about love, it was mutual convenience. Were we close? He asked. I paused, then answered softly, "Not really. More like roommates who shared a bed." His expression became hard to read. I shrugged, indifferent. That evening, Luna returned, dressed more professionally. She carried her laptop and updated Ethan on work matters, but both of them kept glancing at me. I'd always known how to read a room. They didn't want me there. I packed up my things. Before leaving, I told Ethan, "I'll pick you up tomorrow morning for discharge." There was more I didn't say, that I'd pick him up, and we'd file for divorce. From the beginning, Ethan had never wanted this marriage. Back then, the Jiang Corporation was facing a crisis. My uncle came to me, freshly out of university, and asked if I was willing to enter into a strategic marriage. I said, "If I can help, I will." My parents had died in an accident when I was 5. I'd been raised in my uncle's home since. He ran a company, and the family was well off. My aunt treated me kindly. Whatever she gave her own daughter, I had too. I had always felt grateful. Now that Jiang Corp needed help, and all it took was for me to marry someone, how could I refuse? Before the marriage, my uncle arranged for me to meet the man. The first 2 times, he never showed. I waited all day alone at a cafe. The 3rd time, he finally came. Ethan, rumored to be the illegitimate son of the Gu family, with no real power. Even if he didn't want the marriage, he had no choice. I braced myself to endure his indifference, perfunctory politeness, or even open hostility, but none of that came. After he sat down, his expression softened strangely. Leisurely sipping his coffee, he asked for my name, my habits, my preferences. We chatted aimlessly, even drifting into talk of interior design, what kind of curtains I liked in the master bedroom. Odd, but I played along. 3 months later, we married. The marital home was decorated entirely to my tastes. Even the slippers were shaped like rabbits. On our wedding night, he handed me a card, a car, and the deed to the house. I thought it was part of some standard agreement. Later, my aunt told me otherwise. That was Ethan's own decision. She always felt guilty, afraid my happiness was sacrificed to save Jiang Corp. She worried I'd suffer. But over time, Ethan's visits home and his thoughtful gestures eased their concerns. They urged me to live well with him. In 2 years of marriage, I came to know Ethan as a responsible man. Even without love, he fulfilled his role as a husband. The crisis at Jiang Corp had long passed, and so had our last excuse to remain tied. Now, he didn't even remember me. I didn't know how to carry on pretending, nor did I want to wait in silence, hoping he'd eventually remember. Ending it now might be the cleanest way for everyone. The next morning, I arrived at the hospital early. Ethan had just gotten up. "You're here already?" he asked, surprised. I nodded and began packing his belongings, taking out the clothes he would need. Better to leave early. There might be a line. Ethan, still puzzled, went to wash up. The discharge process was quick. I took him straight to the Civil Affairs Bureau. As we pulled up, something seemed to dawn on him. Leaning back in his seat, he watched me pull out our IDs from my bag. "You said we'd be lining up for divorce." I nodded and unfastened his seatbelt. "Yes, there's no one at the marriage window. But the divorce line is packed. If we're late, we'll miss our turn." He grabbed my wrist and narrowed his eyes. "How come I didn't know I was getting divorced today?" I didn't pull away. Instead, I met his gaze. "Well, now you know." He said nothing, still holding on. I continued gently. "Ours was a business arrangement. There was never any love. If your amnesia only erased me, that proves how little I mattered to you. Once this is over, you'll be free to be with someone you actually care about." I didn't say Luna's name. Didn't want him to think I'd been snooping, but if he'd risked his life to save her, it meant something. Ethan let go, frowning, deep in thought. I circled around, opened his car door, and pulled him out. "Come on. I've got a client meeting this afternoon." He followed, voice flat. "You're in a hurry." I didn't hide it. "A little." "Was I that bad to you?" I stopped, turned to look at him. "Bad? Don't you have your own answer to that?" He said nothing. A shadow crept over his face. Once the paperwork was done, we still had to wait through the mandatory 1-month cooling-off period. But the outcome was already clear. Walking out of the office, I felt a wave of relief, followed by an empty ache. Ethan stood beside me, eyes lowered, happy now. A gust of autumn wind swept by, sending leaves dancing across the pavement. I suddenly remembered the day we first met. It had been a windy afternoon, too. Fitting, I supposed, that it ended the way it began. "I asked Luna to pick you up," I said. "Wait here." Then I drove off alone. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Ethan still standing in place, watching in my direction. The distance blurred his expression. My hands tightened on the wheel, trying to ignore the sudden heaviness in my chest. If Luna hadn't shown up, if there had been no accident or memory loss, maybe Ethan and I could have made it. No wild passion, no stormy twists, just peace, in an ordinary life. Back when our marriage delayed my plans to study abroad, Ethan used his connections to find a renowned designer willing to take me as an apprentice. I spent over half a year overseas. Most of the time, he flew over to visit me, bringing along snacks from home. Later, my college roommate and I opened our own studio. Ethan never openly helped with contacts or orders, but behind the scenes, he swapped out accessories for ones I designed, promoting my work discreetly. He was never the expressive type, and kept little contact with the GU family. Most of his time was spent traveling for work. The time we spent together wasn't much, but he was always thoughtful. Every time he returned from a trip, he brought back local souvenirs and handwritten notes. Although Ethan always had his assistant take care of things, when we were home, he would occasionally wash the dishes after I cooked. Looking back now, it was actually quite like what a real couple would do. That's life, isn't it? Simple, quiet, until life decides to throw you off balance. After my client meeting that afternoon, I returned to the studio to continue sketching. But I couldn't focus. Every time I picked up my pen, Ethan's face flashed through my mind. I kept thinking about the night before his accident, how he held me as we fell asleep, promising to bring back my favorite snacks from the trip. I was so exhausted my eyes wouldn't stay open, my head resting on his shoulder, but I still managed to mumble, "No spicy food." Ethan had chuckled beside my ear and said I was such a little foodie. Lost in thought, Ashley came by. After hearing my dilemma, she looked thoroughly baffled. "Clearly, You like him. If that's the case, why divorce him? I stayed silent for a moment, then tossed my pen on the table. He doesn't even remember me. If we don't get divorced, what am I supposed to do? Just be his roommate. I admit, part of my insistence on divorcing Ethan was out of frustration. Who knew how long it would take for him to recover his memory? I couldn't deal with that kind of uncertainty. Ashley, my best friend, could tell I was in a funk after a dramatic curse aimed at that jerk. She pulled out her phone and made a call, probably booking a private room somewhere. She slung her arm around my shoulder with a mysterious grin. Tonight, I'm taking you to a good place. It wasn't until we arrived that I understood what she meant by a good place. A line of male models stood in front of me, each over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, narrow-waisted, all different styles. Tiffany stood on the edge of a table, tapping the mic like a host at a pageant. Her eyes practically sparkling. Tonight, it's all on Chen's tab, she declared. You guys better give our dear sister the royal treatment. At her cue, the entire row of male models closed in on me. Number 9 handed me a towel and fed me fruit. One by one, they called me goddess, queen, beautiful. The compliments dizzying me as much as the alcohol. I was stiff at first but slowly loosened up, drunk and unhinged. I started giving them scores like some sort of judge. This one's mouth kinda resembles Ethan's, but not as pretty. 7. This one's abs are weak. 6. This one's nose is okay. 6 again. This guy's eyes, close, but not cold enough. 7. After the whole circuit, none of them satisfied me. I shoved them away and sat down on the couch, frowning. None of them look like him. Ashley, drunk and giggling in the corner, muttered, "Of course they don't. They're not related to him. None of them are Ethan." I raised my glass in frustration. Just as I was about to drink again, someone took the glass from my hand. I blinked hard, trying to focus. His silhouette looked so much like Ethan's. I grabbed his collar and pulled him closer. The way he frowned, exactly like Ethan. He always frowned like that, when he was annoyed, thinking deeply, or upset. The longer I stared, the more convinced I was. Then he spoke. "You don't even recognize your own husband." I couldn't really hear him clearly, but even his voice sounded like Ethan's. Emboldened, I tugged down his tie and slurred, 9 out of 10. "What's your name? I'm booking you for the night." He chuckled, voice gentle and amused. "Book me. You doubt my purchasing power." I puffed. "I've got money." I crawled around, trying to find my purse to prove my point and bury him in cash, but before I could move, I was scooped up into someone's arms. I looped my arms around his neck. The familiar crisp scent of him calmed me instantly. I leaned in and fell asleep. When I opened my eyes again, I was wearing pajamas, lying in Ethan's arms. I looked around. Our master bedroom, everything from the night before rushed back. That last model hadn't been a stranger. It was Ethan. I panicked and tried to get up to find my phone, only for him to pull me back into his arms. "You're awake," he murmured lazily. Head hurt. I shifted away from him. "Where's Ashley?" "She's fine," Ethan said. "I got her a hotel room upstairs." Relieved, I exhaled. But then another thought struck me. Had Ethan recovered his memory? I stiffly turned my head, locking eyes with him. His gaze was deep, and his lips curved in a faint smile. I suddenly felt guilty. "I'm fine," he said, "but let's talk about us." I pushed away, rolled to the other side of the bed, and tried to act casual. "What's there to talk about?" He got up, poured me a glass of warm water, and handed it over. Most people get into car accidents, and their wives rush to their side. I get into one, and my wife finds time between meetings to divorce me. "That's not fair," I muttered. "Grace," he said, "I was only out of commission for 23 hours. You filed everything in that time. Do you really hate me that much? A so-so relationship, just sleeping partners. Is that really how you define our marriage? Did I really mean nothing to you these past 2 years?" 3 back-to-back questions. Too fast for me to answer. My headache from the hangover flared up. I clutched my head, nearly blurting out, "Master, stop preaching." Luckily, I swallowed it down. Ethan stepped closer, pressing his warm fingertips gently to my temples. His tone softened. "You can't hold your liquor. Why drink so much?" I shot him a glance and swatted his hand away. "You're twisting things. You're the one who lost your memory, And now you only remember other people, not your wife." He was silent for a moment. I expected him to argue. Instead, he apologized. "I'm sorry, it's my fault. I forgot the most important person." His honesty left me at a loss. Before I could think of how to respond, his phone rang. With 2020's vision, I saw the caller ID clearly. "Luna." Ethan frowned and hung up. The phone rang again. After several calls, he finally answered, said a few words, and turned back to me. I knew he had to go. Whatever I wanted to say got stuck in my throat. He walked up, phone still in hand. "Let's talk tonight." "Okay." I stared at him for a moment, then nodded. As soon as he left, I packed my things and caught a flight to Haicheng for work. "Talk? What's the point? We're already divorced. I have no intention of chatting. He's not the only one with a job. I'm busy too. Who has time to wait around for an explanation?" Over the next few days, Ethan called me repeatedly, but I was always in meetings or out with clients and never picked up. I didn't want to respond, so I sent a simple message: "Busy, don't disturb, later." While dining with a client, I caught a news segment. That's when I learned Ethan had been removed from his position. The company was now under Victor's control. Thinking back to the day he rushed off, it turned out the company really was in trouble. By the time dinner ended, it was late. Rain fell outside. A cool breeze slipped under my collar, sobering me up just enough to shiver. Rainy nights make hailing a cab impossible. I stood downstairs for ages without getting a ride. Still waiting, Nathan, my biggest client in Haicheng, walked out from the lobby. I glanced at my phone and smiled. "It's close. If my car gets here first, I'll give you a lift back to the hotel. It's on the way." Just as I was about to accept, seeing the queue hadn't moved, a deep voice cut in from the shadows. I looked up. Ethan was walking toward us in a black trench coat, holding a large umbrella. His chiseled features were half obscured by the night. Raindrops exploded around him like mist. Step by step, he moved through the fog. For a second, I was too stunned to react. Before I could snap out of it, he stood between Nathan and me, shielding me. He extended a hand toward Nathan. "Hello, I'm Miss Jiang's husband." Nathan blinked, surprised, but returned the greeting with polite restraint. A few pleasantries later, Ethan whisked me away. His car was parked nearby, but the rain was heavy enough that even a short walk soaked our pant legs. "Why didn't you just drive up to the entrance?" I asked. Ethan gave me a sidelong glance, voice laced with bitterness. "Drive up, and risk him thinking I was your Uber driver?" I was speechless. Who the hell drives a Maybach for rideshare? Besides, I added, "We're divorced." He corrected me. "Ex-husband. The papers aren't finalized." "You're already so eager." I looked out the window. "We're still in the cooling-off period. Think it over. Maybe I'll settle for you." I never realized Ethan could be so shameless. At the hotel, he followed me all the way to my room. I blocked him at the door. "You shouldn't come in. It's inappropriate." He lowered his eyes to meet mine. "Inappropriate? You were kissing and hugging me all night when you were drunk. Now it's inappropriate. Grace, even if I'm your ex, you can't just use me and dump me." He was unbelievable. I tried to shut the door, but he wedged his foot in. "I won't come in. Just one question." He looked at me seriously. "That day outside the divorce office, you told me to go be with the person I liked. What did you mean? Who do you think I like?" I stared at him, tipsy and irritable. "You tell me. Why don't you explain your relationship with Luna first? One call from her and you'd ditch me in a heartbeat. You'd rather get a concussion than let her get hurt. You forget your own wife. But remember her. Tell me, how should I interpret that?" Ethan's brows drew tighter and tighter, but he still didn't speak. Annoyed, I shoved him out and slammed the door. The next morning, I wheeled my suitcase out, and found him standing at my door already, holding an envelope. As I opened the door, he straightened up and said with sincerity, "Grace, I won't argue. If you misunderstood, it's because I didn't give you enough security. This is my letter of apology. About Luna, there's nothing between us. She's just my subordinate. I'll explain everything when we get back to Beijing." I didn't understand why Ethan insisted he could only explain everything after we returned to Beijing. Until we landed and Lynn came to pick us up. With her stood a 4-year-old girl. That's when I learned that Luna was a single mother. She used to be a career woman, someone admired for her strength and ambition. But she gave it all up for marriage and family, in the end. The marriage fell apart, and she was forced back into the workplace, but after years of absence, her professional skills were outdated, and being a single mother made employers all the more hesitant to hire her. It was Ethan who, by chance, saw her resume and offered her a chance. She seized it, and excelled. It's never easy for women in the workplace, especially for those trying to return after a long hiatus. I later learned that on the day of the accident, Luna had actually been on her way to attend a parent-child event at her daughter's kindergarten, but when an urgent project issue came up, she rushed over to report to Ethan instead, and that's when the crash happened. Only then did I begin to understand why Ethan would have instinctively pushed her out of the way. Before the Gouge family finally acknowledged him, he too had been raised by a single mother. No one could understand that kind of struggle more deeply than he did. Sitting in the back seat of the car, Luna's daughter suddenly crawled into my lap and looked up at me with her big eyes. "Auntie, you're so pretty," she said in a sweet, childish voice. I gently pinched her soft cheek, remembering the peace charm pendant in my bag. I took it out and placed it around her neck. "This is a little gift from me," I said. "May you always be safe." After dropping us off, Luna left quietly. As we got out of the car, Ethan suddenly grabbed my hand. "Do you still want to divorce me?" Before I could say anything, he added, "It doesn't count. You tricked me when I lost my memory." "I tricked you?" I raised an eyebrow. "You told me our relationship was just average, that we were like roommates. You took advantage of my amnesia to drag me to a divorce office. If you brought me there now, do you think I'd still go? Wasn't that deception?" His logic was absolutely bizarre. Then, taking a step closer, he suddenly grabbed my hand and placed it against his abs. "You said other guys' abs weren't hard enough. Mine are solid. Go ahead, touch all you want, in broad daylight, in the front yard no less." Saying such shameless things, I swatted his hand away and dashed into the house. After that, Ethan and I resumed our normal life. No one brought up the divorce again. Even though he had been dismissed from his position, he wasn't idle at all. If anything, he was busier than ever, often working in the study late into the night. I assumed he'd been reassigned within the company. But one day, he was called back to the GU estate. When he returned, there was a cut on his forehead. Looked like it had been caused by an ashtray, even after 2 years of marriage. I didn't know much about the GU family. Ethan rarely brought me home and avoided involving me with them. The few times I had met them, they always felt distant. The only one who ever showed Ethan true affection was Sophia, his stepmother. She had suffered a miscarriage in a car crash many years ago and could never have children of her own. She treated Ethan with genuine kindness. That day, when Ethan came home, he held me for a long time. Eventually, he whispered with a strange sense of relief, "It's finally over." I was so worried about his injury, I didn't ask what he meant. 2 weeks later, the entire GU corporation collapsed, quietly acquired by a foreign conglomerate, and the person behind that acquisition, the true owner, was Ethan. It turned out, Ethan had been the one to orchestrate Gouge's downfall. It was said that old Mr. GU had to be rushed to the hospital that very day, but Ethan didn't go to see him. Instead, he bought a bouquet of sunflowers and took me to the cemetery. At his mother's grave, Ethan knelt down, gently wiping the dust from her photo with a handkerchief. The woman in the photo was young, her features soft and bearing a striking resemblance to Ethan's. "Mom, GU Corporation is gone," he said softly, his voice barely audible and trembling at the end. In the past, whenever we visited her grave, Ethan never spoke. He'd simply stand in silence, staring at her name. But today, he was visibly shaking. I stepped forward and hugged him tightly. Everyone had always believed she died of cancer. I once thought so too, but she hadn't been ill at all. Her death had been a lie, fabricated by the GU family to force Ethan back into their control. It was the GU family who had killed her. Ethan spoke with chilling calm, yet every word sent shockwaves through my chest. I couldn't imagine the pain he must have gone through when he uncovered the truth. I didn't know how he'd endured all these years. All I could do was hold him even tighter. He buried his face into my shoulder and cried for a long time. A breeze passed by, carrying a faint scent of grass and wildflowers. The sun slanted gently across the tombstone, where raindrops sparkled like stars. The storm had passed, everything had settled. GU Corporation was officially renamed C-High Group. Everyone around Ethan changed, except for Luna. She had never worked for GU, she had always worked for Ethan. At first, she managed his overseas business in secret. 2 months before the acquisition, she entered Gouge's headquarters under the guise of being his assistant. Once old Mr. GU stabilized, Ethan had him sent to a private nursing facility abroad. No one else knew where, no one could reach him, except Ethan. All the drama landed Ethan on financial headlines for a week straight. In the shadows, countless people gossiped and criticized. At a banquet one evening, I overheard someone sneering behind me, "What an ungrateful brat." If the GU family hadn't claimed him, who knows where he'd be now, and this is how he repays them. I was fuming. Without hesitation, I tossed a glass of wine straight onto the man's shirt. Men really could be gossipers too. As Ethan was walking over with some documents about a business expansion in Taiwan, he saw me mid-argument, hands on my hips. He pulled me aside, glanced at the man coldly, and said, "Bill your dry cleaning to my assistant." "But if this is all you're capable of, whispering behind people's backs, you're not worth my time." On the way home, Ethan looked amused by my indignation. "Why are you so mad?" I rolled my eyes. He clearly didn't understand the situation and just started talking crap. Can't stand people like that. Should have taken 2 of his projects just to shut him up. "Grace," he said, his voice suddenly gentle, "I don't care what people say about me. I only care what you think of me." He was halfway through the sentence when his tone softened so much, it made me feel a little awkward. I looked at him for a while and answered, "What do I think of you?" I used my eyes. Ethan was briefly at a loss for words. As the year drew to a close, work at the studio picked up. Ashley and I had been traveling non-stop for over a month. That day, I had just arrived at a hotel when someone knocked on the door. I stood by the door and asked, "Who is it?" "Your roommate, you know. The one you can sleep with." I rolled my eyes and opened the door. Ethan was leaning against the doorframe, smiling. "Can you be serious for once?" "Why not? That's what you called me." I gave him a look. "I also said our feelings were average. You buying that?" "Nope." He had brought along some pastries I liked. As I sat down to eat, Ashley barged in. She was so excited, she didn't even look up. "Hurry, there's a top-rated male model bar nearby. While your husband isn't here, let's." She stopped mid-sentence. We both stared in silence, mouth full, eyes wide, because it was Ethan who had opened the door. His pupils dilated in shock, and then, he turned and left. That night, I was doomed. Ethan interrogated me dozens of times. "Are those models better looking than me? Whose abs are harder, mine or theirs?" It wasn't until after midnight that I finally fell asleep, but not long after, he got up to take a call. Then he shook me awake. His face was serious. "We need to go back to Beijing. Something happened to Sophia." Sophia had always been a graceful woman, well kept, always dressed in cheongsam dresses, elegant in every sense. She used to say, "A woman may grow old, but she must never stop loving beauty." So when I saw her lifeless body covered in blood, I couldn't process it, not at first. After the collapse of GU Corporation, Victor vanished. Sophia somehow tracked him down and killed him in a car crash, it turned out. The accident that had caused her miscarriage years ago hadn't been an accident at all. It was orchestrated by Victor to seize the family inheritance. Sophia had spent years trying to find evidence, but it had all been destroyed. In the end, she chose the most tragic form of revenge. A week after she was cremated, I received a parcel. Inside was a bracelet and a small card, just 4 words, "For Grace," from Sophia. My eyes stung with tears. I only hoped she would never again meet the GU family in her next life. As the harsh winter faded, the new year arrived. Our studio gave everyone a long break and handed out generous bonuses to thank the team for their hard work. Ethan, ever the workaholic, stayed holed up in his study all New Year's Eve. On calls, in meetings, all the housekeepers had gone home, so I cooked dinner myself. Only I accidentally swapped sugar and salt. The food turned out terrible. Ethan tried to praise it at first, but soon gave up and set down his chopsticks. "How about we eat out?" I shook my head and went back to the kitchen. Came out with 2 cups of instant noodles. on a night of family reunions across the country. Ethan and I sat in the living room eating cup noodles while watching the Spring Festival gala. He looked oddly delighted. "Is this a new flavor? Tastes different from what I remember." "I hope it's not expired," I muttered. He looked confused. It wasn't expired. I had added vinegar to his. That morning, I got a routine New Year's greeting from Jin. Ethan saw it, and used it as an excuse to mess with me for half the day. "You like vinegar so much, then drink it all." The Spring Festival gala was nearing its end. I was getting drowsy when I turned to see snow falling outside. Wrapping myself in a coat, I stepped into the yard. Flakes drifted gently from the sky. In the living room behind me, the countdown had begun. Ethan came up behind me, his warm hand pressing gently against my cheek. "Do you have a wish for the new year? Wishes don't come true if you say them out loud." He chuckled, his voice low and lazy. "It's worth a try. You can wish on me." I turned to face him. A snowflake landed right on his lashes. I tiptoed and kissed him. As the bells rang in the new year, fireworks bloomed across the sky in brilliant bursts of color. In that moment, I made a silent wish in my heart. Side story, a peaceful beginning. The best decision I ever made in this life was showing up to meet the marriage match the Gu family had arranged. At first, I resisted. I hated the idea of a marriage arrangement. I hated being controlled. I hated everything about the Gu family, but I still had to use their resources. Somewhere along the way, I had become a cold, calculating person, willing to do anything to take down Gu Corporation. I worked day and night, deliberately keeping myself too busy to breathe. When the Gu family told me I would be entering into a political marriage, I was filled with disgust. Everyone was just a pawn in their matchmaking games. And now it was my turn. I said yes to pacify them, but I never intended to show up. If the other party gave up, all the better. But the person on the other end had no temper at all. After being stood up twice, she still calmly scheduled a third meeting. I wasn't planning on going then either. It just so happened I was nearby that day, and my grandfather kept pressuring me. Frustrated, I decided to drop in and get it over with. I never expected that my arranged match would be her. I had met her once, 8 years ago. It was payday at the convenience store where I was working part-time. As I carried boxes, a coworker asked what I planned to do after my shift. I said I needed to buy a cake. It was my mom's birthday. My coworker pointed to the bakery next door. I shook my head. "Too expensive. I can't afford it." Just then, I bumped into a girl. She smiled and apologized. I looked at her, then quickly looked away. Later, a car pulled up at the bakery. A little girl in a princess dress stepped out. It seemed they had ordered the wrong cake. The two women stood there, chatting about it. As I finished unloading the last box, someone tapped me on the shoulder. It was the girl who had bumped into me. She had a beautiful, clean smile, eyes curved like crescent moons. She handed me a box. "I overheard you talking about buying a cake. We ended up with an extra one. Do you want it?" I took it. She smiled again. "Happy birthday to your mom." She left right after that. To her, it was probably just a passing moment. To me, it wasn't life-changing either. But I never forgot her smile. That day, I entered the cafe carrying my usual frustration, but when she looked up, and I saw that same smile again, clean, bright, it melted all the tension I had been carrying. I sat down. She introduced herself as Jiang Ning. We talked easily. I found myself thinking, if she were the one I had to marry, maybe that wouldn't be so bad. In the years that followed, every time I saw her peaceful sleeping face, her radiant smile, I felt like life had meaning again. I loved bringing her small gifts from every city I visited, always with a handwritten note, and whenever she came home, I felt like I had a home again too. Side story 2. I grew up timid, never daring to go against expectations. My mother told me that the only thing I could do for the Shin family was to marry well, to bring in support. The boldest thing I ever did in my first 18 years was fall in love early. The boy I liked came from a modest background but treated me with sincerity. He helped me with schoolwork. He told me to be independent, to be brave. Then he added, "Even if you're not, I'll protect you." But I gave up when our relationship was discovered. My mother said nothing, no scolding, no anger. She simply froze my accounts. My meals became identical to the housekeeper's. I understood her message. Without the Shin family, I was nothing. I held out for a month before giving in. I liked having nice afternoon tea. I liked wearing pretty dresses. I wanted to walk into designer boutiques without a second thought. I knew I was weak and selfish. I knew I was greedy for luxury. In the end, I married Kevin. A womanizer who had already fathered a child outside the marriage, but to preserve his rights to inherit, he came back to marry me. In some twisted way, we were the same. Neither of us could give up the wealth and prestige of our families. But life is full of choices, and you can't have it both ways. If you choose material comfort, you must let go of love. Kevin and I had no emotional connection. Our marriage was a still pond, lifeless and quiet. When I found out I was pregnant, I was thrilled. I dreamed of having a beautiful daughter. I opened a savings account just for her and deposited money into it every month. I swore I would never let her become a bargaining chip in a family alliance like I had been. I wanted her to be free, independent, and brave. That account was both her safety net and my secret hope, but everything was destroyed by Brian. He wanted to seize the family inheritance and stage the car crash. He had hoped Kevin would die, and he did. So did my child. I survived. But I could no longer have children. I hated the Gouge family. Old Mr. Gouge had never liked Kevin. Even after his death, he didn't want Ethan to inherit, but he insisted on dragging him back into the family. I felt nothing. I had always known about Ethan's existence but never cared enough to do anything. In the end, it was Kevin who ruined everything. That woman, Ethan's mother, was a victim too. What I never expected was how vile the Gouge family could be, just to bring Ethan back into the fold. They schemed and murdered his mother. I hesitated for a long time but eventually decided to tell Ethan the truth. I hoped that one day, he would bring Gouge Corporation to its knees, and he did. I lived to see it happen. I was genuinely happy. Shin-chan was a good kid. Even at the end, he was still trying to help me find evidence from the crash, hoping to bring Brown to justice, but I knew no such evidence existed. As much as old Mr. Gouge hated Kevin, he was still his son. The evidence had long since been wiped clean. Kevin was dead. The old man had to protect someone. But it doesn't matter anymore. What the law couldn't do, a mother would. For once in my life, I chose to be brave. Next, I will tell you the second story. If you think the content of this issue is good, you can click to subscribe. Your support is our greatest motivation. After 2 years as an exchange student, I returned to campus to prepare for graduation. The day I landed, my academic advisor hosted a welcome dinner and even sent Samuel, our department's star student, to pick me up. Samuel was widely acknowledged as a tech prodigy in our department, already a co-author on more than a dozen SCI papers despite only being a junior. His future was undeniably bright. The dinner was held at a riverside clubhouse, newly opened in the past couple of years. The ambience was lovely, though I didn't expect to run into a familiar face so quickly. Evelyn, it is you. When did you get back? I turned to see Lee Cheng, face lit up with surprise. And if Lee Cheng was here, that could only mean Julian was too. They were practically inseparable. I didn't want to dwell, so I offered a polite smile. Just arrived. Ryan, however, was visibly excited to see me. He tugged insistently at my arm and insisted I stop by their private room to say hello. It's all old friends, he said. I wasn't the type to be overly reserved, since I'd already run into them and couldn't really decline. I figured it wouldn't hurt to stop in for a quick drink or two. I turned to Samuel. I'll just go say hi over there. Be right back. Could you let everyone know for me? Samuel nodded and reached out his hand. Your bag must be in the way. I'll take it inside for you. I paused for a second, then handed over my small crossbody bag without much thought. I didn't notice the odd look that flickered across Lee Cheng's face as I followed him toward their room. Graduation's just around the corner. We've been buried in thesis work. So we thought we'd get together while we could, he said as we walked. As Ryan pushed open the door, he turned and blocked the view inside. What took you so long? Your kidney's acting up again, he teased, stepping aside to let me in. And the rest of you, why aren't you standing to welcome our goddess Evelyn back home? As soon as the others caught sight of me, they shot up in surprise. Everyone except the man sitting at the head of the table. Julian, No way, when did you get back, Sujie? Someone called out. Why didn't you ask your little brother here to pick you up? Damn, Sujie's even prettier than before. Guess the UK really does wonders. Some were genuinely happy to see me, others not so much, but I accepted it all with grace and a smile. Just got in today, it's been a while, everyone. Back then, I had pursued Julian with wild abandon. His friends all knew me well. Some had even encouraged us. After we got together, I helped them out plenty too. Especially when it came to final exams. In our sophomore year, I left for my exchange program, and Julian and I broke up. To the others, it seemed abrupt, but the truth was, I had spent many sleepless nights before making that decision. Even if I hadn't gone abroad, we would have broken up eventually. Li Cheng pulled out the seat next to Julian, motioning for me to sit. I declined and instead chose a random empty seat nearby. This was a chance encounter, I said lightly. Just came to say hi, still need to check in with my professor afterward. Julian, who had remained silent until now, suddenly scoffed. Our Sujie's back and already a busy lady. No wonder she's a globetrotter now, not like the rest of us. His words cast a chill over the room. The previously lively chatter died down as eyes shifted between us. Before I could respond, the door swung open. A girl burst in and threw herself straight into Julian's arms. Traffic was awful. I swear I didn't mean to be late. Julian glanced at me, then gently wrapped his arms around her, speaking softly and reassuring her as if no one else were present. Their display was so overt that everyone turned to look at me, some curious, others unreadable. Li Cheng, ever the peacemaker, broke the tension. So, Sujie, are you staying in China after this, or heading off again? I'll be staying, I said, finishing my postgrad here. I could tell the small talk had run its course. I got ready to leave. Just then, the girl who had clung to Julian called out behind me, Su Shuejie. I turned, a pretty but unfamiliar face met my eyes. I don't know you. I replied, you're the one who dumped Julian and ran off abroad. The so-called first love, she shot back, loud enough for everyone to hear. There was a collective gasp. Julian's expression remained unreadable, but the look in his eyes chilled slightly. I reached out, gently pushing my glass away. Don't get the wrong idea. Junior, I said with a half-smile, I'm not his first love or his scar, just a very ordinary ex. Ignoring Julian's now stormy expression, I stood up, right then. Samuel appeared at the door. Sushime, are you ready? Professor's waiting to see you. I raised my glass and toasted the room, then I left with Samuel. Back in our own private room, my fellow lab members gathered around, chatting away excitedly, but the professor was nowhere to be seen. My senior sister explained that he was stuck in traffic and would be a little late. Samuel quietly poured me a cup of hot tea. Figured you might have been uncomfortable over there, he said calmly. 20 minutes later, the professor arrived, warmly asking after me. My lab mates were equally curious about my life abroad. The room was lively and filled with conversation. After dinner, the professor left. He'd been swamped with reviewing papers lately. And since everyone knew I had just returned and must be tired, they didn't plan a second round. I was going to call a cab home, but my luggage was still in Samuel's car, so he offered to drive me instead. I stopped by the restroom before leaving. When I came out, I found Julian waiting in the hallway. He looked like he had been drinking. His cheeks were flushed, and he wore a lonely expression, like a golden retriever abandoned in the snow. Susu, you've lost so much weight. Was life in the UK hard? It was fine, I replied, drying my hands with a paper towel. Just not used to the food. I met his misty gaze. You've had too much. Let Ryan take you home. He took a moment to respond, then stepped closer. Do you still care if I drink too much, Evelyn? I was. Before he could finish, a crisp voice cut through the tension. Sushime, are you ready? Samuel had arrived. He only noticed Julian when he stepped closer. He glanced at me. I'll go warm up the car, wait at the front. He was holding my coat and bag. He was here to take me home, and I didn't want to cause more trouble. Songshisyang, I called, walking past Julian. We're done talking. Let's go. Samuel handed me my coat. It's windy outside. Put this on. As we walked out, I fumbled with the buttons, which snagged on a strand of hair. Samuel reached out to help me untangle it. From behind, Julian's voice rose, tinged with anger. "Evelyn, are you two together?" I sighed internally. This was the second time Samuel had been dragged into my mess with Julian. I turned to look at Samuel apologetically, but his gaze had shifted. Calm and unshaken, he frowned slightly. "And what right do you have to ask her that?" Julian froze, speechless, his eyes reddening again. "Samuel and I left together, once in the car." I turned to him. "I'm sorry, Songshisiang. I've dragged you into this again." He gestured for me to fasten my seatbelt and started the engine. "It's no trouble." Samuel had helped me immensely since I first entered the department. I wouldn't have made it into Professor Chen's lab without his recommendation. At the time, I wasn't even qualified. Once in the lab, he guided me through projects and experiments. Slowly, I went from errand runner to a core team member. In our second year, he encouraged me to apply for the professor's one and only exchange spot. A 2-year overseas program followed by guaranteed graduate admission. It was a rare chance. I knew my odds were slim, but I gave it everything I had. I lived in the lab, running experiments, preparing for presentations. Julian resented me for it. Always picking fights, always sulking. He never said it out loud, but I knew he didn't want me to leave. The night I finished my final set of data, it was already past midnight. Samuel was still there. He offered me a ride back to the dorm. Julian was waiting at the door. He demanded to know why I was out so late, and why I was with Samuel. I explained it was lab work, thesis prep, but he didn't want to listen. He lunged at Samuel and punched him. Twice. The next day, Samuel showed up at the lab with a bruised face. When others asked, he said he walked into a door, and despite everything, he still helped me finish my thesis defense. I got the exchange spot. "Would you ever get back with Julian?" Samuel's clear voice pulled me out of my thoughts. I lowered my gaze. The streetlight flickered across my hands like broken waves. Then, as we entered the tunnel, all the light disappeared, just like my feelings for Julian. "No," I said quietly, "we're not heading in the same direction." "Do you regret it?" I gave it serious thought and shook my head. "No, I don't regret it. He was a good person, and I didn't do anything wrong either. We just weren't meant for each other." Samuel wasn't one to pry, so he didn't press further. He wheeled my suitcase all the way to the door. My mom insisted on pouring him a glass of water, asking him to sit down and chat. She kept him talking, clearly enjoying his company. I glanced at the time, not wanting to delay him any longer. I made up an excuse about taking out the trash and let him out with me. While waiting for the elevator, Samuel suddenly chuckled. "So, you're throwing me out along with the garbage?" I widened my eyes innocently. "Of course not. It's late, and I didn't want you going home too late. You're always welcome to come in for tea some other time. But it's not safe going back too late." The elevator doors opened. We stepped inside. The space wasn't large, but not cramped either. Just enough distance between us. Samuel's voice, laced with quiet amusement, was especially clear in the silence. Thoughtful as always, I stared at the numbers climbing above the door, my fingers tightening around the trash bag. Finally, the elevator opened. I walked out quickly and tossed the garbage. Samuel stood beside his car but didn't move to get in. He didn't seem like he was ready to leave. Suddenly, I felt a flutter of nervousness, unsure whether I should say drive safe or take care. We stood facing each other. The night breeze brushed past softly. "Evelyn," he said, "I think I'd be a good fit for you. Would you consider it?" I blinked, stunned. "Senior, are you serious?" Even in the dark, I could see the way his brows softened and the curve of his lips. "Shamai, I'm just seriously trying to earn my chance." My cheeks began to flush. I stared at my pink slippers for a moment, then lifted my head. "Senior Song, I'll think about it seriously." After sending Samuel off, I walked around the neighborhood before heading upstairs. My mom had already showered. She'd set out my pajamas and body wash. My favorite scent. I called out from the hallway. "Mom, I'm sleeping with you tonight. I already brought your pillow over." She replied from her room. "Just come in after your shower." After drying my hair, I went to her room. She was half reclined, scrolling through short videos on her phone. I noticed a large patch of red scarring near her ankle. It looked fresh. I rushed over. "What happened?" She brushed it off vaguely, eventually saying, "The noodle cart's burner rack slipped the other day. the boiling water spilled. I gently touched the wound. I couldn't imagine how much it must have hurt. My professor gave me a few days off. I'll come with you tomorrow to fix it. If it's broken, we'll just replace it. She pulled me into bed and patted my hand comfortingly. It's really not a big deal. I'm fine. The burner's fine too. Xiao Song already fixed it. I paused. Xiao Song, the senior who brought you home today, she said. Isn't his surname Song? I was even more confused. He comes by the shop a lot. She added with a pleased smile. He's been eating wontons there these past 2 years. When it gets busy, he helps out. When something breaks, he fixes it. And now he's even bringing you home. Make sure you treat him to dinner sometime. I murmured an acknowledgement, though my thoughts were a whirlwind. When I was in 1st grade, my dad had an affair. He brought the mistress home and asked for a divorce. My mom wanted custody of me, so she gave up everything else. All my dad left us was this old apartment. She had once lived like a rich man's wife. Never cooked, never fixed anything. But she made amazing wontons, so she set up a little stand outside the apartment complex. Water boiling on one side, wontons being wrapped on the other. She never complained. She never cried in front of me. Only once, when she spent hours trying to fix a broken light and still couldn't get it to work, I caught her silently crying. After that, I went online and learned how to fix a bulb. Next time it went out, I stacked 2 stools, climbed up, and installed it myself. Then I learned how to fix pipes, how to repair the burner, how to handle small appliances. I knew she didn't feel secure. That was okay. I would become strong enough to give her that security. Whatever she needed, I'd learn it. Over time, she cried less and less. The stand eventually became a little storefront. Before I left the country, I told her, if anything breaks, hire someone. Don't skimp. Don't try to fix it yourself. I never expected that Samuel would be the one stopping by all this time. I never told anyone about those things. Only once mentioned it in passing when I changed a light in the lab. I had said, my mom can't fix stuff like this and doesn't want to spend the money, so I do it. Apparently, he remembered. I stared at the ceiling and recalled what he had said that night. I think I'd be a good fit for you. My cheeks burned again. In the dark, my thoughts scattered endlessly. Then my mom called out, Evelyn, I'm listening. Your father said last week he wants to get back together. What do you think? I was quiet for a moment, then I called the police. Mom, this is your life. You don't have to think about me. Whatever happens, I won't leave you. Just be yourself. My professor gave me 3 days off. I spent all of them helping at the wonton shop. The day before returning to campus, I made dinner plans with Samuel. I owed him so much over the past 2 years. I didn't even know where to begin repaying him. That evening, a familiar face walked into the shop. It was the same girl I'd seen at the party, curled up in Julian's lap. She ordered a bowl of wontons and looked at me several times, clearly wanting to speak. I ignored her. After an hour, she finally couldn't hold back. Sushwejie, do you remember me? Of course, I said as I continued wrapping wontons. Are the wontons good? She ignored my question. Julian's in the hospital. Are you not going to visit him? My hands only paused for a second, then I replied loudly, isn't that what doctors are for? I'm not a doctor. My indifference seemed to enrage her. Her voice rose. You're the one who chased him. You're the one who dumped him. He waited for you for 2 years, and now you're just walking away. I set the last wonton in the tray and leaned on the counter. If you keep popping up after a breakup, blurring the lines, do you call that friendship? She looked stunned, then deflated. If you have time, go see him. He really wants to see you. She left. I lowered my head, staring at the tray of neatly wrapped wontons. My thoughts drifted. The next day, I returned to school and met up with my roommates. Then I packed up my dorm, scrubbing every inch clean. Before I knew it, evening had arrived. I remembered the dinner with Samuel and rushed to shower and get ready. We were meeting directly at the restaurant. Samuel wasn't on campus that day. I arrived half an hour early and was browsing the menu when my phone rang. It was Lee Cheng. Sujie, can you come to the hospital? I didn't say anything. From Ryan, I heard a sigh. He's just too proud. Hasn't dated anyone in 2 years. He was trying to see if you still cared. I don't know why you two broke up. I'm sure it wasn't just because of the exchange. I can't comment. I'm just an outsider. but he's been running a fever for days, keeps mumbling your name, he's not doing well." The moment I hung up, Samuel arrived. He draped his coat over the chair and asked quietly, "Did you wait long?" I shook my head, then, after hesitating for a moment, I said it, "Songshisiang, would you come with me to the hospital? There's still something I need to resolve with Julian." I knew how unfair the request sounded. I was ready to be refused, but Samuel didn't ask a single question. He stood up, took his coat, with the same calm tone he always had. He asked, "Which hospital?" I was the one who froze, just for a moment, before standing to follow him. "Ninth Hospital." After getting into the car, it began to rain outside, the drops pattering against the window. Samuel didn't say a word the entire ride, although I knew he wasn't much of a talker to begin with. I couldn't quite gauge his mood at that moment. Ultimately, it was all my fault. I had arranged to meet someone for a meal, but not only did the meal not happen, I now found myself dragging him to the hospital. However, I don't like guessing blindly, so I asked directly, "Senior, does my sudden change of plans make you unhappy?" Samuel kept his eyes on the road, not looking at me. "What do you mean? You made plans with me but went to see Julian instead. Do you think I'm not respecting you enough?" We happened to stop at a red light. Samuel rested his head on his hand and looked at me, a hint of laughter in his voice. "Didn't you bring me along with you, Evelyn? Your unconscious honesty is the greatest form of respect toward me." Samuel's handsome face was half hidden in shadow, his beautiful eyes slightly curved. For a moment, I was dazed. It seemed like nothing needed to be said between us. When I arrived at the hospital room, Julian was already awake, half leaning on the bed receiving an IV. He looked pale and weary. When he saw me enter, he instinctively frowned. "Ryan called you. Mind your own business." Ignoring his temper, I poured a glass of water and handed it to him. "Drink some water before you start scolding. It's a miracle your hoarse voice can still make a sound." He reluctantly took the cup and drank it all in one go. "Want more? If you pour it, I'll drink." I smiled and poured another cup for him. Julian took it but didn't drink, nor did he speak. I remained silent too. "Evelyn, if I hadn't broken up with you when you went abroad, would we still be together now?" I shook my head and answered truthfully, "I don't know." Shu Ling-chen sighed. "We were together for over a year, but I feel like I don't understand you at all. It's not that I didn't want you to study abroad. I just felt like we were drifting further apart." Julian turned to look at me, his expression calm. "Evelyn, when did I start falling behind?" I took an orange from the fruit basket and gently squeezed it. "It's not about falling behind, we just have different paths to take, our destinations and distances are different, so we could only accompany each other for a part of the journey." Julian looked at me and forced a smile. "Then why did you pursue me back then?" I tilted my head and smiled at him. "Why else? Of course, it was because I liked you. Did you think I had nothing better to do, Julian? I had a crush on you for 3 years before I pursued you." I peeled the orange in my hand. The scent, both tart and sweet, filled the air, and I felt as if I had returned to the height of that summer. Back then, the gym teacher responsible for our class was on leave, so our class merged with another for the period. I didn't participate in the run because I had my period and was resting in the shade, but my sanitary pad had leaked, and there was a large stain of blood on the back of my pants that I didn't notice. It wasn't until some boys finished running and returned to the starting point that I heard their whispers and laughter. I was so embarrassed that my face turned red, and I could only squat in place, waiting for my female classmates to return. When Julian came back, he heard them too. He first scolded them, then kicked the boy who laughed the loudest. Rolling his eyes, he said disdainfully, "Are you a primitive man or did you slip through the cracks of compulsory education? We learned this in middle school biology. Why are you making a big deal out of it?" After that, he walked over and draped his school uniform jacket over my shoulders. "Classmate, do you need me to take you to the infirmary?" At first, I wondered why someone would wear a school uniform jacket in the summer. It wasn't until I saw the red rashes covering his fair arms that I was startled. He smiled nonchalantly. "Don't worry, it's just an allergy, it's not contagious." I wrapped the jacket around my waist, muttered thank you, and ran off. Later, when we were divided into arts and science classes, we still weren't in the same class, but we often ran into each other. He was always the star of every basketball game, and I never had the courage to bring him water. I could only cheer for him from the crowd. The image of that youthful, spirited boy dominated my entire high school years. During college orientation, he was featured on the confession wall every day. That was when I found out we had been accepted to the same university. After thinking it over for a long time, I mustered the courage I had built up over 3 years and confessed to him. He didn't remember me, and I didn't want to rely on the past to make an impression, so I pursued him for a year, and we eventually got together. But that's how relationships are. When you're not together, you only fantasize. Once you're together, you become more and more aware of reality. Julian had been spoiled since childhood. His privileged environment gave him excellent manners but also the confidence to be willful and free-spirited. As he said, college was meant to be squandered. You're only young once. Those who have a secure future can afford to think like that. I used to love his unrestrained brilliance, but in the end, I couldn't keep up with his pace. It's like how some people love the sun but can never catch up with it. But you can't blame the sun for moving too fast. On the road to the future, some people walk with light steps, while others stride forward quickly. Julian was the former, and I was the latter. For me, college was a starting point, a springboard, especially since I knew I wasn't particularly talented. I had to work twice as hard to catch up with those ahead, so, gradually, he often said I didn't have time for him. While I urged him to study harder to avoid failing, we both cherished the relationship and respected each other. So, I would stay up all night to finish my tasks just to free up a day to have fun with him, and he would turn down dinners to accompany me to the library. I would study, and he would play games. I didn't know how long a relationship built on mutual compromise could last. It wasn't until the second semester of sophomore year that I applied for an exchange program. He said he didn't support it, but his words always implied that I didn't need to work so hard. He made promises to me, coaxed me, and tried to make me rely on him. He wanted to use love to keep me. But I've known since I was young that love from others can always be lost one day. Only by being strong yourself can you secure your future. At the crossroads, we ultimately had to choose our own paths. After I finished speaking, Julian was silent for a long time. Finally, he asked in a trembling voice, "Evelyn, is there still a chance for us?" I handed him the peeled orange and said softly, "The part of the journey we shared was short, but we both gave it our all. There's no regret, only blessings. In this lifetime, I will meet many people and create many memories. As I grow older, some will fade, but others will remain clear in my memory forever. Julian, you will always be the brightest youth in my youthful memories." Julian nodded silently. I stood up to leave. Suddenly, with reddened eyes, he grabbed my hand. "Evelyn, is Samuel someone on the same path as you?" I thought for a moment, then curled my lips into a smile. Senior song has always been my guide. When I came out, I didn't see Ryan. Samuel was sitting in a chair reading a thesis. I sat down next to him and sighed. "No wonder my senior said the other day that you're going to work her to death." Samuel put away his phone and chuckled. "That exaggerated." I shook my head. "Not exaggerated at all. Senior, sometimes you really are like a learning machine, and a talented one at that." Then guess if this learning machine, I stiffened, took an orange out of my pocket, and handed it to him with a somewhat ingratiating smile. "Senior, have an orange." Samuel looked down at me, his eyes like a warm spring breeze, calm and gentle. He reached out and took it. "I stole it from Julian." I said too much. "It's only fair I steal a couple of oranges from him." By the time we left the hospital, it was past mealtime. In the end, I took Samuel to my mom's wonton shop for a simple meal and promised to treat him to a proper meal next time. The rain had stopped. We walked along the roadside, the post-rain breeze exceptionally refreshing. Samuel and I chatted idly. Suddenly, he asked me, "What are your plans for the summer?" "I'll probably take a trip with my mom and then look for a suitable internship. Mom has been busy making money all these years and hasn't taken a break in a long time. I've saved up some scholarship and project money over the years, so it's a good time to take her out." I thought Samuel was just making conversation, but he continued, "Then, when you have time, can I ask you out?" Samuel doesn't talk much, but every word he says is a straight shot. I was stunned. I scratched my head. Stammering, "Of course, I'll definitely come to the lab during the break." Samuel stopped in front of me, his features clear and his voice crisp. "Not in the lab, in the movie theater, at a restaurant, by the sea, at the amusement park. I want to ask you out to many places." Even through the thin layer of his glasses, I could feel the intensity of his gaze. My cheeks began to heat up again. I fiddled with the hem of my skirt and stammered, "If we go to the amusement park, can we not ride the roller coaster? I'm afraid of heights." This time, it was Song Rui's turn to be stunned. He laughed and said, "Okay." 2 weeks later was the official graduation ceremony. I was the outstanding student representative and gave a speech on stage. After the ceremony, I took photos with my classmates in the auditorium. Julian, wearing his academic gown, handed me a bouquet. "Evelyn, happy graduation." I took the flowers and smiled at him. "Happy graduation. I'm going abroad. My dad wants me to gain experience at the overseas company. I'm leaving the day after tomorrow. Will you see me off?" I plucked a hyacinth from the bouquet and handed it to him. "Julian, have a smooth journey." The ceremony ended in the morning. I had lunch with my roommates and returned to the dorm to rest. In the middle of it, I received a phone call. Samuel came to see me just as I was about to go out. He handed me a USB drive. "There might be some suitable internship positions and companies on here. You can take a look when you have time." I held the USB drive and looked up at him with a smile. "How do you remember everything? Maybe this learning machine has a large storage capacity." I couldn't help but laugh and said softly, "Thank you, senior." "You're welcome, Evelyn. Happy graduation." We stood under a tree, the slanting sunlight filtering through the branches and making my face feel warm. I lowered my head and put the USB drive in my bag. "Are you going out? I'll take you." I felt embarrassed always having Samuel drive me around. He had been busy lately, handling several experimental projects. "No need, I can go myself. It's not far anyway." Samuel didn't insist. He walked outside with me. I asked him if he wanted to have dinner together that evening. He thought I was meeting friends and told me to have fun with them. I shook my head. "Not friends, it's someone I don't like." Samuel looked at me and frowned slightly. "Is it your dad's current wife?" I was taken aback. "How did you know?" This time, Samuel insisted on going with me. He also told me that the real reason my mom scalded her ankle wasn't because a rack fell over. It was because someone kicked it over. My dad wanted to remarry my mom. But the other woman wasn't having it and came to cause trouble for my mom. She smashed up the shop and kicked over the wonton rack. Luckily, Samuel was there that day, so only her ankle was scalded. Afterward, my mom didn't let Samuel tell me because she was afraid I'd worry while I was abroad. I gripped my bag and remained silent. When we arrived at the agreed-upon cafe, she was already there, with a little boy beside her. I ordered an iced Americano. Samuel took the child to the counter to order a small cake. After they left, I directly threw the coffee in her face. My tone was cold and hard. If my mom's scolding had been more serious, what I'd be throwing in your face right now would be boiling water. She shook the coffee off her bag and smiled. "Do you know your dad and I aren't divorced yet? Isn't your mom just trying to secure your inheritance? Remarry, over my dead body?" I took a tissue and wiped off the coffee that had splashed on my hand. "Whether you're divorced or not is your business. I don't care if you live or die. I'll only say this, if you bother my mom again, I won't let you off." Samuel returned with the child. The little boy rushed over and asked, "Mom, what happened?" I handed her 2 tissues and smiled. "Your mom accidentally spilled coffee on her face. Help her wipe it off." I picked up my bag and stood up, giving her a cold glance. "Keep your little trinkets to yourself. No one wants them." After leaving the cafe, Samuel asked, "Do you want to go home?" I nodded, my eyes red. When we got home, Mom was chopping meat filling. She asked me why I had suddenly come home in the afternoon. I hugged her and cried for a long time. She was startled, thinking something had happened to me. I told her I knew everything. Mom teased me for crying over such a small matter, but to me, it wasn't a small matter. If Samuel hadn't been there that day, if the entire pot of boiling water had spilled on Mom, I didn't dare think about it. I sniffled and asked Mom, "When he talked to you about remarrying, did he tell you he wasn't divorced yet?" Mom picked up an apple and started peeling it, her tone full of indifference. I didn't ask. I don't want to remarry him anyway. Whether he's divorced or not doesn't matter to me. I was amused by Mom's eye roll and tone and accidentally blew a snot bubble. Then why did you ask me about it back then? Oh, he's so successful now. I thought it might help with your future work or something. Who knew my daughter wouldn't give him the time of day, with that little he has to offer? Why would I bother with him? I wiped my tears and hugged Mom, feeling relieved. Evelyn, the best thing I ever did in my life was fight for your custody without asking for anything else. Children are also their parents' teachers. Your independence and strength since childhood have taught me to cherish my own life. Don't worry, Mom will live her life as independently and strongly as you do. Unknowingly, Mom was no longer someone who could only rely on others. She had begun to enjoy her own life. That evening, I returned to campus and arranged to have dinner with Samuel. Since he still needed to go back to the lab to check data, we chose a restaurant on the back street near the school. After dinner, we strolled back to campus together. Samuel walked me to the dormitory building, and I solemnly thanked him. Senior song. Thank you. I wanted to say it during dinner, but I felt it should be more formal. I'm not very good with words, but you are truly a very important person in my life. I'm really grateful. Samuel smiled. Why so formal all of a sudden? Do you feel like you owe me a big favor? I nodded. Then how should we account for the fact that Auntie never charges me when I go to the wonton shop? I was a bit stunned and laughed along. That's nothing. If you like it, go as often as you want. Lifetime free meals. Samuel fell silent for a moment, then sighed almost imperceptibly. Evelyn, nothing I've done for you is a burden. I don't want you to feel pressured because of these things. I'm very serious about you. If possible, I hope we can spend the rest of our lives together. Not just accompany each other for a stretch of the journey. So I hope you'll think more about me as a person, not just the things I've done. The campus during graduation season was peaceful and tranquil. The night sky was scattered with sparse stars, but they couldn't compare to the starlight in Samuel's eyes. Samuel returned to the lab, and I went back to my room with a tangled heart. After showering, I lay in bed playing with my phone. An app pushed me a few job listings. I suddenly remembered the USB drive Samuel had given me during the day. I opened my laptop, plugged it in, and saw that it not only contained company profiles and job descriptions but also a table noting the focus and requirements of each position, alongside his own suggestions. Looking at the extremely detailed information in the USB drive, I felt my heart swell. I checked the time on my phone. 11:57 p.m. I quickly climbed out of bed, changed clothes, and ran out in slippers. When I reached the lab building and saw a row of dark classrooms, I realized I'd forgotten to ask if Samuel was still there. I felt my pockets. I hadn't brought my phone either. I sighed silently. People really do lose their reason when they're caught up in the moment. Since I was already there, I decided to go up and check. The lab was at the very end of the third-floor hallway. Just as I reached the third floor, I saw a tall figure leaning against the lab door. Head slightly bowed, looking somewhat lonely. In the darkness, I couldn't see clearly, but I recognized him instantly. My recently calmed mind started racing again. Senior, the lab door isn't locked. I pushed Samuel inside. Before he could say anything, I pressed my lips against his cool ones. Samuel froze for a moment before wrapping his arms around me tightly. My kissing skills were a bit lacking. Completely unmethodical, just a mess of kisses. Samuel held my head and took over. Shifting the initiative, he was quite a bit taller than me, so I had to stand on my toes and hook my arms around his neck. After a while, it really started to ache. Samuel hooked a chair with his foot and sat down, holding me in his lap. Our noses touched. Samuel's warm palm rested against my waist as he asked hoarsely, "Is this your answer, Evelyn?" It wasn't that he'd never called me Evelyn before, but this time it felt like he was bewitching me. A tingling sensation swept through my heart. I clenched my fingers and whispered, "Senior, I also think you're really suited for me. If possible, I also hope we can spend the rest of our lives together, not just accompany each other for a stretch of the journey." Samuel chuckled softly and responded with a long, lingering kiss. Samuel and I walked back to the dorm hand in hand. Halfway there, he suddenly asked, "Why did you suddenly come over?" I thought for a moment and replied, "It wasn't really sudden. Maybe I've liked you for a long time but didn't dare admit it, but at some point, the liking suddenly overflowed, and I couldn't ignore it anymore." Samuel held my hand a little tighter. "Why didn't you go back to the dorm after everything was settled, even competing over check-in times?" Samuel looked at me with a smile. "Today, at your dorm building, I thought you were going to reject me. You even brought out the good person card. I didn't want to hear it, so I had to coax you back first. I was upset and didn't want to go back to the dorm, so I leaned by the door thinking about what to do. I didn't expect the always calm and composed Senior Song to overthink things. For a moment, I found it amusing. I thought Senior was always confident about everything." Samuel's tone was mild. "With projects and papers. Yes, but you are an exception." After summer break, I began my graduate studies. Many new juniors joined the lab, and I started mentoring newcomers, conducting experiments, and submitting projects. Samuel had already begun teaching classes and planned to stay at the university afterward. Every time Teacher Song held a class, the room was full. Aside from students there to study seriously, the rest were fans who had heard about him. I secretly attended once and didn't remember anything. I was too busy staring at the teacher. A white shirt paired with gold-rimmed glasses, plus that handsome face, made him the epitome of restrained elegance. He looked completely different from the man who held me and kissed me every night. Some bold girls directly asked for his WeChat. Samuel always replied with, "I have a girlfriend. I'll propose after she graduates." Later, he simply started wearing one of my strawberry hair ties on his wrist every day. The following semester, Samuel introduced me to his parents at the Riverside Club, where we had dinner the day I returned from abroad. It was only then that I learned the club was his family's business. I asked him, "With so much family wealth to inherit, why are you still grinding so hard with us?" He was stunned for a long time before replying, "I find papers really interesting. Some people genuinely love studying. I signed up for an international competition. Winning would be a huge help for my future career, but it would also take a long time. 3 months abroad. This time, I brought my mom along. I would compete, and she would travel. When I wasn't busy, I could accompany her on trips." That day, when I left the research institute, it was snowing outside. I took out my phone to record a video to send to Samuel, but a familiar voice came from behind. "Yeah, I think it's beautiful too." I turned around. The full moon hung in the sky. He walked through the snow in a black coat, the swirling snowflakes falling behind him like a breathtaking painting. I suddenly remembered Yu Guangzhong's line of poetry. With a smile, he comes toward me. Between the moonlight and snow, he is the third kind of peerless beauty. I was only dazed for a moment before rushing toward him. "Why are you here? Aren't you really busy?" Samuel held me tight, burying his face by my neck, and whispered, "I wanted to see you, so I came." The night was deep. The bright moon hung high, and snowflakes danced everywhere. Samuel and I walked slowly. He had come through the snow, and now we returned together under the moonlight. Well, that's all for today's story. If you like this video, please subscribe. We will continue to update more exciting stories and look forward to seeing you next time.